certain things. Okay. First place, raise your hand if you like mysteries. I like mysteries. First book I ever really read seriously was a book of short stories by Edgar Allan Poe. I was a young teenager, and the first mystery that I remember reading exactly was called The Murders in the Rue Morgue.
Yeah.
And The Murders in the Rue Morgue was really quite fascinating because the police discover the bodies of two dead women in a room that's been locked from the inside. And there's no fire escape. The building is substantially tall, relatively speaking, for France in the 1840s. And the fascinating thing about this story is that about 10 years ago or so, I read a book written by two very good Swedish authors jointly called The Locked Room, with the same basic premise. Except the doors were locked, the person was shot, but there's no gun in the room. All right, so you have the same plot somehow evolving with entirely different points of view in terms of people, characters, police, but the same idea. Not to take away from the fact that just because people are using the same plots, things don't get different. I mean, if you want to get into what might be a locked room today, you might use a key card in a hotel, right? So it's a little bit simpler. But then I evolved just like the history of mystery writing evolved. The first book that was really a mystery, in fact, I referred to it briefly in my novel, is called The Moonstone by William Wilkie Collins, a British author, which was written around the same time in the middle of the 19th century. And then we ran ahead into the time of Arthur Conan Doyle and Sherlock Holmes, and this is what really exploded in the English-speaking world, the love of mysteries and an interest in mysteries.
Didn't know it was on.
This must be a police call. And Arthur Conan Doyle really exposed the world through Sherlock Holmes to this whole new genre of writing, which was not the romanticism that had been given earlier. No matter how many good Russian authors there were, this was something different. And the English-speaking world is really famous. The most famous known English author at the time is Shakespeare. And after this got going and got rolling along, then the interest grew. And then you reach the halcyon days starting in the 20s and 30s of mystery writing, when you got into certainly Agatha Christie, who has apparently sold 4 billion copies of her books over the years. She's not still there to take the royalties personally, but still, that's quite a job. And then you built up in that same period, 20s, 30s, into the 40s, people like Dashiell Hammett, the American, who gave us Sam Spade and the Maltese Falcon. And around the same time, you had Raymond Chandler, who gave us Philip Marlowe. And interestingly enough, film helped make their work even more interesting. You had Humphrey Bogart playing Sam Spade in The Maltese Falcon, and Humphrey Bogart playing Philip Marlowe in The Big Sleep, both of which are terrific films of that genre. And then you ran ahead a little bit in time to, I mentioned Nicky Spillane and some other people because they were picking up the pieces that went afterwards. And you got into the modern day, which are much broader mystery thriller genre. You have your John Grishams. You have a whole bunch of foreign authors now who have done very good work in mystery writing. My own favorite current mystery writer is a guy named Henning Mankell, who's a Swede. You'll find his books, I'm sure, in the library here. And his character, there's always a famous character, is a guy named Kurt Wallander. And you can see the Wallander series of 3 shows adapted from his books on PBS, been made, filmed, written, and directed, adapted by the British author and actor Kenneth Branagh. And they are very, very fine, an hour and a half productions by PBS. Anyway, you get to all this stuff, and there's some things that they have in common that I think are very, very valuable, at least to somebody who wants to write. And the most important thing I think they have in common is they take very simple situations and they make mysteries out of them. They give you questions to economist named Amos Posner. He's been an international business executive of some success. He's married to a woman who's recently become a partner in a Manhattan law firm. They have an apartment on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, and they have a beach house in Amagansett. What could be bad? What could be bad until the feds come calling and say that the firm has been indulging itself in violation of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which is bribing foreign officials to get business. Now, denial, but the firm panics. They throw this guy under the bus. Amos Posner loses his job. They get paid him off, told him to keep his mouth shut, and things will get better after a while. It'll blow over. 2 years have gone by and it hasn't blown over. So he's kind of in limbo. He can't get another job in his business. He's old enough so that time is passing by. So he's spending more and more time out at the beach in Amagansett while his wife is in New York. She says because he's spending so much time out there, he must have a girlfriend there. So their relationship is becoming more and more strained. So one day, he spent a weekend there in the city, and he's going back to Manhattan, happily to go back from Manhattan to Amagansett, and he's waiting for a bus in front of Victoria's Secret on 86th Street, the Hampton Jitney. And he gets on the bus, and as he's getting on the bus, he sees this very kind of exotic, sexy woman getting on the bus also. She's wearing a distinctively pink and white dress. And he notices her, but then he kind of ignores her as he indulges in his own self-pity, if you will, as the bus takes off. And he kind of forgets about what she is, except that he had originally imagined she might be, because she was dressed a little bit less than his fine wife would dress, that she had some kind of less exotic job, less interesting job than his wife. So sure enough, as the bus is making the curve right here at the pond to get into the East Hampton stop, this woman gets up from a seat behind him and stops at his seat and asks him if he's getting off there, and if he is, could he show her where the beach is? It turns out she introduced herself as basically a resident in psychiatry at Mount Sinai, which was the last thing he was thinking that this person might be doing. But he says, no, I have to go on to the next stop. I left my car behind the Amagansett Library, not this library, but the Amagansett Library. So she says, that's a pity, and she gives him kind of a very longing look. And then she gets off the bus, and he's sort of flattered for a few minutes that somebody's really paying attention to him, whereas he's been kind of in limbo for a while. The next thing that happens is that he parks his car, realizes that since his wife is coming out for a few days, he better go back and to Cinderella's in town and get some food, something simple for dinner. So he does that. He goes to Cinderella's, picks up a few things, as well as a sandwich for lunch because he's hungry. And he goes out. He's about to sit at one of the tables and eat his lunch. And that's where I'll pick up the story from the book. He sits at one of the outside stone tables, despite the chill. He's suddenly very hungry. His last meal was a chef salad the previous night at a local Manhattan bistro. Oh, so it's you. The words draw his eyes upward. The woman in pink and white stands above him, a burst of white teeth against tan skin. He has never gotten used to people who smile so openly. May I join you, she asks, resting a hand on the back of the other's seat even before he can answer. Such tables are meant for sharing, yet she wants to be invited, and so he waves his hand while his wiry 5'11" body swivels to the side to let her pass. This is the first opportunity to see her face without turning his neck. Her skin is remarkably smooth, as if she is newborn, her natural pink lips full to bursting. There is eye makeup, and her brows are neat and dark, but he sees no other artificiality. He hesitates for words. He's rarely engaged a woman like this, but it is all frivolous, and Sarah is, frankly, not here to think otherwise. He suddenly enjoys the opportunity to relax. I thought you got off at a later stop, she says. I did, but I needed to shop, he answers, and pulls the shopping bag upward. She ignores his bag, saying, can you show me the beach? She's almost so direct that he nearly winces. All I can think of to say is, if you want to see the beach, you can take a taxi, or I guess I can drop you there. That "That's good," she says without hesitation, yet even before the last words leave his mouth, he realizes that a line has been crossed. He has left an opening, and a part of him, that piece of brain housing genetic material that determines conscience, hopes she declines. He has never been unfaithful to his wife, nor even considered it, despite Sarah's recent allusions. Yet this woman, who he now admits to himself looks exotically attractive, does nothing to dispel this thought, and she accepts the invitation. "That sounds great," she reiterates her approval. "Thank you." She replaces the top of a soup container and carefully lowers it together with the plastic spoon, wedge of bread, and napkin into a bag that matches his. He stands and directs her to the rear lot and into his car. "It's chilly here," she says from the bench at the very back of the beach, only steps from where he parked. He has taken her to Atlantic Avenue Beach in Amagansett. There are no other cars, the unseasonable cool keeps everyone away, save a couple dressed in yellow rain slickers standing near the water, tossing shells into the breakers. She holds her cup of soup, which she says is too spicy, but nevertheless she eats greedily. In the short drive from where